And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Catholic Convert Show. It is finally Friday, and we're going to wrap up this week by bringing on another guest. Been looking forward to talking to this guy. Unfortunately for him, he is currently located in communist Canada. We're going to do everything we can by the end of this episode to get him extracted. Maybe I can call Thor. He can get it done. But this man is a husband. He's a father. He's a gym owner in his hometown, pure-blooded Italian Catholic. And we're going to bring him on. His name is Mike Pantile. Of course, his last name ends in a vowel, like all good Italians do. So we're going to go ahead and welcome you to the show. Welcome, Mike.
Jeff and Ed, honored to be here. Thank you so much, fellas.
Hey, Mike.
Great intro.
I've got a little bit of practice doing them.
Clearly.
Oh, man. So what's it like living in a communist country? I'm kidding. I'm not going to start this episode off that way.
Let's just get right into it, man. Come on. What are we doing?
No, man. It's really good to have you on. I know Ed was all excited telling me about it. And like we were talking about before the show, when he said, hey, I got Mike Pantile coming on. Am I supposed to know who Mike Pantile is? And so I start searching for you on Twitter. I'm like, oh, I follow him. So, yeah, I probably should know who he is. But
yeah, it's because my last name nobody knows how to pronounce. So when they hear Pantile, they think Pantile, or they're like, that can't be the same guy. But
I was thinking, like, who's Mike Pantile?
Yeah. Man,
I got the redneck pronunciation down here.
Pantile, 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 Pantile. Nobody actually knows, but it's Pantile. Yeah. I appreciate it, guys. Jeff, I've been following you for a while. Definitely one of my favorite creators on X, or no, I don't call it X. It's Twitter. So
you've got poor taste, my friend. So, born and bred Italian Catholic. You grew up in a Catholic household, right?
Yeah, grew up in a Catholic household. Fell away from the faith, but here I am. I came back. I got confirmed on May 7th. So, praise the Lord. So
nice. Yes. So you are not a convert, you are a revert.
That is correct. Like
I'm gonna have to talk to Ed. This show's for converts. I'm sorry.
Dude, it's not the Catholic revert show. I didn't get the memo, man.
No. But no, that's cool, man. What so you grew up Catholic. How were you not? I mean, this is the same thing that happened to my wife, but I'm curious to how it happened for you. How did you not end up, first Holy Communion, confirmation, all that other when you were a kid?
Yeah, so I think like many others, I was a product of just poor catechesis. Italians are very, culturally Catholic, and my family still, practices. They pray, and they believe in obviously Jesus and the Blessed Mother, the saints, etc. But there wasn't really much teaching. It was more so the rules without necessarily the joy. There wasn't really that regularity of going to mass. And I remember going through, First Communion, getting the sacrament of reconciliation. And then past that, I just hated going to Sunday school. And so I just stopped. And so I didn't actually go the full thing and get confirmed, which is, why, I got it done so expediently this past May 7th. They just needed my baptismal certificate, and that was it. Yeah. So after that, it became, an edgy atheist teenager for a number of years, read all of the Hitchens and, Richard Dawkins books, and was really deeply entrenched in that. I actually got like an atheist tattoo that's now covered up. Praise God. I was one of those guys that just rejected God, even hated God. I would say at one point. And then when it came back to the faith, to be completely honest with you guys, I didn't even know what Protestantism was. I had no idea. Like what Orthodoxy was. I just knew, okay, there's Catholicism and there's Christianity, not realizing that obviously the OG Christians are Catholic. And so I was just one of those dudes that said, yeah, just follow the Bible, bro. What it says in the Bible. But they kind of turned into it and morphed into, well, they don't talk about praying to saints. Like, stop worshiping Mary. I turned into one of those mudslinging Protestant people that didn't really have a proper understanding. And as you guys know, as Catholics being longer than I've been a Catholic, those things are very easily rebutted. It just took a little bit of time. So here I am, reverted Catholic. Praise God.
Nice. I mean, the only one here that's been a Catholic longer than you is Ed. Like, well, I converted. What was it? May 2023.
Oh yeah, so pretty recent too. Amazing.
Yeah.
I've been Catholic. Yeah. What's that? I've been Catholic more longer than most people have been alive, actually. So there you go. Isn't that the case, Jeff?
Yeah,
but
yeah. I mean,
you know,
him and Moses
in my
were short
class.
together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful thing, Ed. I admire
But he's also
Well,
cooler
we had to
too,
talk
because he's
about
Byzantine Catholic.
that. Oh, you're one of them
That
Eastern
is-
Catholics.
I'm one of those Eastern Catholics, yeah, born and raised. And now I'm kind of, we were joking about that yesterday. I'm sort of like bi-ritual because I hang out, as Jeff knows, at like 4 or 5 different churches, half of them Byzantine, half of them Latin Rite. So I'm all over the place. But, you know, the theology is all the same. The beliefs are all the same. But it's cool having a kind of well-rounded exposure to everything. And it's great because I get to answer a lot of questions that way. I mean, I'll tell you, it goes back as far as when my sisters were in high school. They used to get their hands whacked by the nuns because they were blessing themselves the wrong way, or at least that's what the nuns thought. Because the Byzantines, we go right to left instead of left to right, and so the sisters thought that they were just being, you know, they were joking around by blessing themselves, so they'd get whacked on the hand with a ruler. By the time I got to high school, the priests and nuns at least knew of our existence. But I remember explaining the Byzantine Rite to a Franciscan friar who was there. So you know, it's great. There's I think people have a better understanding that every Catholic church doesn't look exactly the same. Every liturgy, well, we have the liturgy, you guys have the Mass. All that stuff does not look exactly the same, but it all comes down together. You know, we're all one, we're all unified, we're all under the Pope. We all believe the exact same things, and that's what's important. You've just got those cultural differences. So yeah, it's kind of cool being Byzantine Catholic, I think, actually.
Yeah, the liturgy is beautiful. You get all of the best aspects of Orthodoxy without the ortho bro cringe, you know. And the funny thing about the funny thing about the cross thing, my eldest daughter is 2.5, and so she knows the sign of the cross, but she goes right to left, and I'm trying to teach her left to right. I'm like, I guess she's Eastern Catholic then. Oh well.
She's got taste. I'll tell you that. She knows what's going on.
Oh, that's awesome.
So what do you got? You got 2 kids, right?
2 kids, 2 young daughters, 2.5 and 9 months old, and obviously gunning for a lot more if the Lord is willing.
Nice. Gotta pump those numbers up, man. You got to get to my level.
You're at like 8, aren't you?
9.
9. Let's go, dude. You're the only guy that I know that has more kids than my good friends Tim Gordon and Will Noland, and that's impressive. They got like 7 or 8 kids. So beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah,
I got 8 boys, 1 daughter. I cannot express how happy I am that I don't have 8 daughters and 1 son.
That's my friend Tim. I think he's got 8 kids. 7 of them are girls. His youngest is a boy.
I need to send that guy a bottle of scotch. You give me his address once we're done here. Like, he definitely needs it. But no, so you're a gym owner, right? Is that something recent, or have you always just kind of? Well, I don't mean you owning the gym recent, but what made you want to get into the fitness industry? I mean, it's stereotypical Canadian Italian, or
yeah, well, that for sure. I used to be a super fat guy, classic Italian. I used to be over 300 pounds, and it was within like 14 months that I lost like 120 pounds, and I was ripped. Jeez. And I was like, okay. I was a second-year apprentice mechanic. I owned a Camaro. Yeah, I'm like the classic stereotypical WAP out here. And so from there, man, honestly,
can we say WAP on the show?
Yeah, can we? I can say, because I am one. We can't say that word. Does that get
maybe
flagged?
I don't know. It might.
Maybe just bleep that out. I didn't realize that was like okay, so this is really funny. One of my clients, because it's that term means without papers, right? So I thought, but one of my good friends of mine, even to this day, he says, no, it's the sound that shit makes when you throw it against the wall. I thought that was good. But
the explanation I heard is it was the sound of the grease in an Italian's hair when you smack them in the head.
That too. That's a new one. That's beautiful. I love it. No, but back to
that was the explanation I heard. I think that was on Sopranos, maybe.
Well, if it's on Sopranos, then that's
definitely true, right?
Yeah, it's
totally
like
culturally accurate.
Yeah. But after I lost the weight, I quit my job as a mechanic, worked front desk at the gym, was just coaching people for free. This was back in like 2015, 2016. And so, made some connections, was dating a girl at the time, and my best friend at the time too. They put some money together. I was broke as hell. Her dad owned a big real estate company and had this office that this basement was unoccupied. So they're like, let's get some equipment. Let's just, fill the basement with some equipment. So I started the gym as of 2016. And so I didn't actually get any experience as a trainer in a gym. I started off in my own place, which was really cool. And then so 6, 7, 8 months later, whatever, me and this girl broke up. We moved into a commercial location, which is still the same location I own today. And it's actually really funny timing because within the next month or so, I'm actually going to be closing it down. It was just, you hit a point in business, which I'm sure you guys can relate to, where you're like, you take a look at everything you got going on. You're like, where am I being stretched where I'm not really seeing the ROI anymore? And that was unfortunately one of those things that had to go. But prior to this point, for the past, 7 or 8 years that I've had it, it's what built my house. It's what bought our first place. It's what, furnished our homes, and what really sincerely built like the foundation of my life financially and physically. And the reason being, I started in a gym, not because it was going to be like, it's definitely not the highest profit business model. That's for sure. I just didn't want to work for somebody else. I loved coaching people. I loved powerlifting. I'm an ex-competitive powerlifter. I still powerlift for fun in my basement here. And I just wanted to be in a gym environment. That's where I felt peaceful, or, at most peace, I would say. And I truly think, and this is going to sound really meatheadish, but the bar and strength training, I think, is what God is a tool that really God used to move me in such a positive degree. And now becoming Catholic, and now listening to Gregorian chant and praying the rosary and lifting, it's on a whole new level. I'm reaching new levels of strength through the through the reversion. So that's sort of the long story short of it.
I got you. So what was it that made you say, all right, I gotta, you said the barbell is what moved you positively into the direction of God. So what was it that made you say, hey, I'm already 3/4 of the way there. I want to become a full Catholic in full communion with the church. Now I'm raise my family the same way. I'm going to, lead my wife to heaven. I'm going to raise my children in the faith. What made you all of a sudden just come back to that? And I ask this a certain way because there really is no all of the sudden conversion for most people, but you grew up Catholic. So you went through the whole, edgy teenager thing that I think every teenager goes through, but out of nowhere, was it out of nowhere? Was it something you just kind of had on your heart? Was it like a slow burning process like it was for me that brought you all the way into the full arms of the church?
Well, to me, it seems slow because it took a number of months. But for a lot of people, online, they'll talk about this should take years. You should really. And I just think that's like lukewarm fence sitting. No, but because really people, I think it's hard making that kind of conviction and that kind of leap, right? Especially when, I based my social media platforms on this outside of the apostolic faith, Protestantism, sola scriptura, all of this stuff. So for me, it was 6 or 7 months back. I don't know honestly where it came from, but it dawned on me that I'm like, wow, when, my Catholic and Orthodox, brothers and sisters, when they come and they try to, have a friendly discourse or debate, I don't really actually know how to rebut them. I don't actually understand my faith. I don't know what it's even grounded in. Non-denominational Protestant might as well be, a denomination in and of itself. And so there was two things. There was that. I'm like, okay, I really ought to really understand my theological worldview because I love Jesus. I'm willing to die for my faith. I'm 10 toes down for it. But I need to understand it. And two, just like you said, Jeff, wanting to lead my family to heaven was that motivator too. It's like, okay, well, I ought to understand this, not just for me, but because I have this role in guiding and leading my family. And so I remember learning how to, pray the rosary properly and, looking into the first thing, which logically was sola scriptura. And so between all of those things, and there was one specific moment I'll never forget. We were at our church, again, 7 or 8 months back, and they were doing the monthly communion. Okay. And I'm looking down at this like little cracker in this little grape juice box, little thing. And I'm like, I didn't really understand the blood, body, soul, and divinity being present in the Eucharist fully, but I understood that it was more than just a symbol, right? I didn't realize it was like the summit of the Catholic faith. Now, I obviously understand that now, but at the time, I felt like this visceral feeling of disgust. Like, this is not right. This can't be right. I'm like, our Lord died and suffered for us, and it's going to be reduced down to this like little cracker in this little grape juice cup. So I went in and started looking into the Eucharist, Sola Scriptura, I prayed the rosary, and then it was the Church Fathers. So it kind of started from like this intellectual perspective. I'm like, okay, well, let me understand Sola Scriptura. That fell pretty quickly. That's actually not that complicated of one to get past intellectually if you humble yourself enough, right? The root of all sin is pride. And I realize now, looking back, being a Protestant, how do you not have the spirit of pride when you're in protest of something, right? And I've always said that I don't want to be the guy that dunks on Protestantism, but I'm really truthfully dunking on my former self here. So looking at Sola Scriptura, that fell quickly. Prayed the rosary, and it was that alone, opening the door to the Blessed Mother and her intercession through the meditation on the mysteries, and then reading the Church Fathers, in particular Saint Ignatius of Antioch, and in his epistles mentioning the Eucharist and the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus being present in the Eucharist, and him, and talking about the bishops and the priests, and seeing this hierarchy throughout the course of the early church history and tradition, understanding how the Bible was collated and promulgated, all these things. And then it led me to one place. So really I was faced with two decisions: Orthodoxy or Catholicism. And without getting into Orthodoxy, to me, it was only really one choice. I see the Godhead being patriarchal in nature, and then seeing that in the Catholic Church with the seat of Peter, right? And so people often ask, like, where does Pope Francis fit in all this? To me, I didn't even really pay attention to who was really occupying the seat, to be completely fair. I respect, him as the leader of the church, but to me, he was always like the rule-proving exception, that like, no matter how ambiguous this guy is, or some of the things that he says are so, you almost can't wrap your head around, almost like weaponized ambiguity.
It's just Catholic speak.
Yeah, it's just Catholic speak, and you don't really understand what he's saying. And he'll say one thing one day and then another, and you're like, okay, well, whatever. I don't really care about the impeccability of his character. He can't change matters of doctrine. So it didn't really make a difference. If anything, it like reaffirmed my position that, hey, look at this history of the doctrine of the church and everything that has remained unchanged. And Eric Ibarra put it really, really, really well. He goes, the Catholic Church has a skin problem, but the organs are intact. So from the outside looking in, you see the scandal, you see Pope Francis, and you see him kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth. But inside, the church and its teachings remain. And it's just like, the Lord said that the gates of hell cannot prevail against the church, and will not prevail against the church or you, as long as, sort of we're within it. So that's what it was, man. And I was inquiring this through the last few months and educating myself on it. And then it was January that Tim Gordon, Will Nolan, Nick Stumphauser invited me on, when I was still a Protestant technically, to be on CMask as one of the co-hosts. And they made a huge impact on me in going in that direction, because, and this is what I really admire about what you guys are doing. You guys are not cafeteria Catholics. The majority of the Catholic space is really like fuddy-duddy, fairy Catholicism. So a lot of these guys are really, really, really good at apologetics, but they're feminists. And many men are leaving the church, young men are leaving the church, because there's not this masculine message in the content anymore. And what brought me back to it was, content like this, content like Tim Gordon's and Will Nolan speaking about patriarchy, speaking out against feminism. And then so I remember calling my parish up one day. I said, hey, just out of curiosity, when are you guys doing confirmations? And this was like the middle end of April. They're like, oh, May 7th. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till the next Easter vigil. I said, okay, well, May 7th it is. I'm not going to, pussyfoot around this anymore. I'm doing it. And, praise the Lord, May 7th, the chrism oil was put on my head, confirmed Catholic. And that was one of the, I'll firmly say it was one of the greatest moments of my life, for sure.
That's awesome, man. It was, I've talked about this before. I think most of it has just been in conversations between me and Ed. It was very much the same way for me. It's kind of like when we had Drago Dimitrov on yesterday. you seem to have approached it in the same manner that he did, which is very in line with St. Thomas Aquinas, using logic and reason and common sense and deductive abilities, deductive reasoning to get down to the root of, well, yeah, it's obviously Catholic, right? That's the answer I'm looking for. It's obviously Catholicism, because Catholicism really is one of the most common sense answers out there for any question on religion. And the other answer that's not Catholicism is also Catholicism, right? It's just, it boils down, it boils down to it every single time, no matter how it's deduced. And it was the same for me. I was writing a book, and this is why I really wanted to get into with you. I was writing a book with a client, and it's called Men of Grit. And it's called Men of Grit, and I get zero royalties off of this, but it's by Jerry Adams. It's on Amazon, and it was an 18-month project where he and I sat down at 5 a.m. every single Tuesday and Thursday. I'm on Zoom with him because he's in Virginia, and we're having these theological and sociological conversations. And it was ultimately based on Estovir, be a man, which is the last thing that David told Solomon before he passed away. What does it mean to be a strong Christian, Catholic, whatever man in the third millennia, where we are now? Because whether we want to, and this is definitely not going to be me getting into like a rant on feminism or whatever, but there is an attack and has been an attack on men and masculinity. And one of the first podcast episodes I ever did on my very first podcast was called Giving Christianity Back Its Balls. And I was speaking with a good friend of mine who's Catholic, who is now him and his wife are godparents to my children. What does it mean to be a good Christian man in the third millennia? It's not, hey, I'm standing at the gate fighting off literal wolves with my sword and shield. Now the wolves are metaphorical, they're proverbial. But how do you do that while somehow navigating the culture that we live in? Well, the answer is you can't. And that was you can't do it while navigating the culture that we live in without breaking some eggs. People are going to get upset. And so you focus on building strong Christian men. What was it for you that, as a men's coach, I meant to add on there, what was it for you that really encapsulated the final vision that you had for the way men are in the church to the way they should be?
That's a great question. I'm no arbiter of like masculinity and truth. I've always said about my page,
I was hoping you would lead with that. Excellent. That was bait. I'm sorry, it was bait. I was hoping you would lead with that.
I pray the Lord that if every one of these appearances, it is just His discernment and wisdom that flows through me. It's not about me. That was another reason I should say about Catholicism. I'll get to that in a second, but I'm not arbiter of masculinity. I'm not the arbiter of truth. I've always just wanted to serve as like a compass that said, hey, I'm pointing over here, and that mountain is Jesus Christ. My mountain is the cross. Okay, so that's where it comes from. But why aren't there enough men like talking about this? Like, what does this look like in action? And I'm not going to pretend to think that I even have it all correctly, because what I did incorrectly was I was narcissistic in that I got very physically strong, but I put that on the altar. I used that to indulge in the pleasures of the flesh, fornication, all this stuff, and I took advantage of that. And then I realized that there's this very clear line between, there's like machismo, and like there's these like manly qualities that, like, let's say Jack Donovan talks about in like The Way of Men, but absent of virtue, absent of the example in Jesus Christ, there's no masculinity. We just have male, the proclivities of the male species just like exacerbated and inflamed in this like cultural idea and understanding of masculinity, this understanding of like manhood, right? Because you can see a guy that's killed 55 people that's serving life in prison. Yeah, he's not effeminate, he's a manly guy, but his masculinity, to me, like, you have to equate that with virtue, right? And so what is virtue? So it's like the virtues of temperance, of restraint, of prudence, of meekness, which I think is a very misunderstood term, right? Jordan Peterson put it really well. It's like those that have swords know how to wield them, but keep them sheathed. What I saw in the church as a whole was these guys that maybe really know theology, but they're these like sweater vest wearing nerds. It's like, dude, like, you're not leading your home properly. Like, you're not making a compelling case for the faith, which we all should. It says I can't remember if it's 1st or 2nd Peter, we need to prepare a defense for the faith. It's like, but you could say all the right theological things, but how are you presenting yourself in the world as a Christian, as a Catholic? You know what I'm saying? And so that was the impetus and the inspiration for even beginning this stuff to begin with. Like I said, I don't know all of it, but at least my piece was, if I can influence one man to lead his marriage better so he can lead his family's souls to heaven, then like this is I'm good. I'm game. This is my purpose right here, other than obviously leading my own family to heaven. Hopefully that was a satisfactory answer. That was a bit of a ramble, but
No, it was satisfactory, but I'm going to let Ed ask the next question because I got to text my wife and tell her to get rid of my sweater vests.
You can wear the sweater vest, my dude. You wouldn't be the first guy I would label as a sweater vest wearing Ned Flanders Catholic.
Like, I got personally attacked over here.
No, dude. No, dude.
Yeah,
I see your fits when you go to mass on Twitter. That's sharp. That's sharp, bro.
Yeah, with you, it's a tweed problem, Jeff. A tweed problem. But
the tweed's badass.
Mike, I'm really curious because I find it very interesting that I find it very interesting that like guys who like in your case it was a reversion, but then I know a lot of guys that convert and things like that, and in a very short period of time, you seem to get a very good handle on Catholic theology. Now, I know you had even mentioned about part of the problem with you being poor catechesis, and believe me, I know that that's true. I think in the period of time that since Vatican Council II, there's been a lot of bad catechesis that has gone on, and we're seeing the fruits of that, unfortunately. So you're talking a very short period of time. It's only months ago that you really turned things around, and I'm wondering, how did you get so well versed and well educated on Catholic theology in such a short time?
Man, thank you, by the way. I don't think I am at all, but I really do appreciate that. I'm the type of guy, and I have a feeling Jeff's the same way. He gives me that extreme obsession kind of vibe. When I'm all in on something, it's obsessive. It's an all-consuming obsession for me. And so even to this day, even now, all I listen to is their Catholic podcasts, Catholic interviews. You know, if I'm not reading, my Bible, I have the catechism upstairs. I'm a podcast guy. So I'm telling you, I consume hours and hours and hours of debates and conversations and interviews. And I mean, this goes without saying, but having close friends, like guys like Timothy Gordon, Nick Stumphauser, and Will Noland, those guys are like genius level IQ, and they're Catholics, and they know theology back to front. And so when I get on CMAS with them routinely on Fridays, I feel like I'm completely out of my depth. Like I'm in like this pool of like these sharks, and I'm like this little fish trying to like keep up with them. But there's something about that when you're around people that have such a high degree of heat, naturally it causes you to raise your thermostat a little bit to get to rise to their level. So guys like them, and then obviously just being so obsessed about it, and again, really wanting to understand it. From an intellectual standpoint, also too, I'm shepherding my wife through this conversion process on her side. So for me, it was a reversion. For her, it's a conversion. She was a baptized Protestant. She converted to Protestantism a number of years ago before we had met, And so I'm like, okay, I need to educate myself. So like my wife has a question, I know how to answer it. And so my wife played a huge role in that as well. And then also, how do I raise my children? I got to teach my children the why and the how. And if somebody tries to challenge me on this, I got to understand the why and the how too. And that's brought such a richness to the faith too. When I never understood what people said when they said the fullness of faith. Now I understand, because there was a certain point where like I would read the Bible and it felt like, okay, my faith ends here. Where now I feel like I'm sitting at this table with all the saints, and Jesus at the head of the table, and there's all this history and these different prayers, and it's just so funny. But when I realized that there was 7 books in the Deuterocanonicals that were omitted from the Bible, the first thing I bought was a Douay Rheims transliteration. I'm like, there's more books in the Bible to read. So that was just like, it's huge.
My man's over here printing first and second Maccabees.
If I can follow
up
up
his refrigerator.
Exactly. But Mike, just kind of following up on that, though, like you mentioned how important it is, and like with my men's groups and things like that, we focus on how important it is. That whole iron sharpens iron concept, where you've got to surround yourself with like-minded individuals, with guys who have the same goals that you do. In fact, Jeff and I have talked about it. I've got a group of guys where tomorrow's going to be a beautiful sunny day. There's 4, 5, 6 of us will probably spend a day surf fishing together. And at some point when we're sitting around the fire and having a cold one, someone's going to ask me a question about Paul's letter to the Romans or something like that, because these are the kind of guys I'm hanging out with. And so do you do something similar to that? I mean, are you hanging out with those kind of like-minded individuals?
I'm a total recluse, man. I'm in my house like 24/7, 365, unless I got to go cut my hair or something. I'm going out with the kids. So most of my interaction, I'll just be honest, I don't like being out in public with people unless I'm going to mass. And to be honest, I don't associate with a ton of people in person here because I just haven't gotten out there. Like me and my sponsor, we're good friends. I met him at our parish, and I'm really careful of who has any kind of influence on my family's life. So where I get most of my interaction is in conversations like this with the friends that I've mentioned several times before. We meet up and we chat, multiple times throughout the week. I was part of a men's group before as well. But I am getting a lot of that sharpening iron, not in person necessarily, which I think is incredibly powerful, more powerful than online for sure. But the big issue that I think the online space solves is, I hear it all the time, there's no guys in my backyard that share the same mentality. So we kind of have to go online. And I would say the internet is mostly bad, but the part of it that's good is, in ways such as this, where guys like us can connect. So I do agree that it's important. Do I do a lot of it in person? Unfortunately, I do not. I stay home. I'm in my sweatpants all day, dude.
I'm wearing sweatpants right now.
Yeah, 100%. Every time I see your post, Jeff, I'm like, you going to mass on Sunday with like a 3-piece suit, and there's always a different one. I'm like, this guy, man. Like when I got confirmed, I had to dig out like the one suit that I had. I'm like, I gotta work on this. What's up with me, man?
Yeah, and my wife says I'm turning into an old British guy because I haven't drank coffee in months. I've got all these classic fit suits. I'm over here drinking Thai food tea with a splash of milk. I've got jammy Dodgers. Like I've got jammy Dodgers in my cabinet that I can't eat because I'm trying to stay in a calorie deficit to get lean again. So it's driving me nuts. But no, man.
You just need to take up pipe smoking now.
I have a pipe in my over here.
Of course you do. Obviously you do.
Like I've got a pipe and I've got scotch. I've got all this stuff down here in this
my man.
desk.
Kindred
Those
spirit.
are prerequisites for being a writer. But
for sure.
No, man. The one thing that you said with the internet is mostly bad, but one of the positives is that you can find, even though they get crapped on all the time, are these echo chambers where you find people of a like mind. I never understood that. Well, why do you want to be in an echo chamber? Because those are my people, right? Like diversity is a strength until it isn't, because you have such a rich diversity of morals and virtues and ideologies that none of you can cooperate and pull in the same direction because people keep getting hung up on the most, almost insignificant minutia of things. And so when you are engaging with people of a like mind that are levels above you, like you do on, the Fridays on your Zoom calls with your pals, it causes you to say, hey, like you said, you got to turn your thermostat up a little bit. You got to elevate. One thing I would say, and I did this at my parish, and I'm not trying to tell you to go and do it with your parish, but it would be awesome to see how you would take it if you try to take a leadership role, if that's something that interests in you, a leadership role of setting up something for men. Because my biggest problem that I had at my parish, everyone was Ed's age or older that was engaging at all of these Bible studies or these, parish community events. And I'm like, I can't drag everyone's oxygen tank around. There's nobody there in their 30s. I'm only one guy. I haven't deadlifted over 500 pounds in years. There's only so many oxygen tanks I can supply. But just putting things together where it was agendaless. We're not going to go and, we're going to do a rosary meeting. Those are cool, but that's not what attracts guys our age. Because I'm assuming you're what, mid-30s?
31, yeah.
Okay, so I've got you by like 7 years. So in our age bracket, it's hard to attract people to come to something if it's just, well, we're going to do a Bible study or we're going to discuss Saint Athanasius. And like, there's got to be something there that draws them in. So it would be cool to see if you wanted to do something that way. I would be open to you picking my brain, or I would just be open to watching you do it to see how I can improve what I do.
No, I'd love to talk to you more about that for sure. That's a great idea. And it's funny. My wife pulled me aside and mentioned the same thing about a month ago. She's like, you got to do something here. Why don't you do something here? Like, do something here. You see this problem, go out there in the community and solve that problem that you're solving online. So hearing it from you, Jeff, too, affirming that idea, because just like you said, I got approached by a gentleman, awesome guy. He's like, yo, Mike, come to the pancake breakfast. It's the Knights of Columbus. It's our men's group. And it's all guys that are 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm like, okay, of course, I wouldn't mind doing this. Like, let's do it. Let's break bread. But how edifying is this really going to be? Are we just going to sit here and do a Bible study that doesn't really go anywhere? Lord knows there's enough of those out there.
Talk about taxes and knee replacements.
Yeah, exactly. So, after this conversation, I'm certainly going to evaluate that. I think that's super important. It's been a blind spot of mine. The community is important. You got to get out there too, in person, for sure.
Hey, I know I'm like a really, really, really old. Yeah, I know I'm the old guy in the room here, but you guys are looking for ideas. I run like coffee houses where I have Christian musicians come in, and it's kind of like a real cool, hip atmosphere. I don't know if you're allowed to say hip anymore, but it's a really nice little atmosphere where you're just hanging out, having something to, having some coffee or whatever. Sometimes we'll have wine and cheese and stuff, some beer or whatever. And you got like some good kind of Christian music playing, somebody on stage in the background. And the conversation naturally drifts to things that guys who care about their faith should be talking about. So it's not a Bible study. It's not a prayer group. We're not saying the rosary. We're not having pancake breakfast with the Knights, but we're just kind of hanging out on a Friday night and listening to some good music and having some good conversation. Might be something to consider. I'm just saying. Now, of course, that's from a really, really old guy. So I don't know if you're going to give it any thought at all, but maybe. I don't know.
No, Ed, that's great, because it's the same thing that I was saying. It doesn't have an agenda. What are we going to do? We're going to hang out. We're going to eat some food, maybe, order a whole roasted pig from a barbecue joint, and we just pig out, drink coffee, chill, go out in the parking lot, harass people walking in, and smoke cigars. Sounds like a great time.
1000%. I'm all down for that. Problem with a lot of the Catholic circles, it becomes very LARPy. It's very LARPy. Everybody's like, you're either a trad or you're a Novus Ordite, you're a apostate Catholic because you go to a Novus Ordo and not a TLM. And I think Father Ripperger put it so funny. He's like, all these couples that go to the TLM, goes over 80% of them are feminists. And I'll add to that and say that, I would say over 80% of it's the men that should be wearing the veils. And so I think it's like, okay, let's straight up. We're not doing a good job making it appealing for the young men and the young souls. That's why they're going the Orthodox route.
Throwing down a gauntlet over here.
I told you, man, it's all on the table.
For any of you that want to send hate mail to the show, you can always go to @Mike Pantile.
Send it, full send, bro. That's why we're losing them to like Orthodoxy, right? They got the beards and the mystery and the cool chanting, and it's all very mystic. But I think we ought to be making a more masculine case for Catholicism. It all started with us, right? I could go down the feminist tangent like deep and wide for hours. So you just, if that's not a topic you guys typically touch on, you guys just tell me.
I
don't care what we talk about. It's not like we're gonna get our sponsors pulled.
We don't care.
That's what I wanted you to say. That was also bait. So good.
I mean, we might get kicked off YouTube, but I mean, I got a backup Rumble account. I'll just upload everything over there. I don't care.
Again, that just means you're over the target if you get banned off of YouTube. I mean, that's why it'll take a little bit longer to grow the channel. Just like, my friend Tim, it's like when you're speaking these uncomfortable truths that people don't run. That's what our faith is all about. It's like the uncomfortable truth, right? We seem to have forgotten that. So if it takes you a little bit longer, good. I'm not going to become spiritually Homo sapien, if you know what I mean, for more viewers.
Yeah, Look, I've been with my wife 20 years. I've had people mad at me, irrationally mad at me for 2 decades. I can put up, and this is someone that, sleeps in my bed. Mm-hmm. So I can put up with strangers.
Yeah, you're not very gun shy on X, and that's why I like your content, man. And what
are they going to do? Give me more impressions?
Yeah, that, and you don't really engage the trolls or the dissenters much at all.
I try not to, because I get sucked into it. I'm a hothead. Ed knows I'm a hothead. I get like,
it's not fruitful either. It's just not good.
It's not, but see, it's like, he knows I can get hot-headed, especially when it comes to someone like attacking clergy or attacking the Eucharist, like what happened in Florida. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go and Deus Volt this lady.
And all while not being a Pope's planer, which is great.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, when it comes to something like what people's opinions are on Pope Francis, I don't care what your opinions are on Pope Francis. I pray for Pope Francis as often as I can.
Yep.
And actually, I'll that's a lie. I pray for Pope Francis as often as my sinful self can remember to pray for someone other than myself. Right?
Bang on. We should be praying for
I'll say that.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And if you don't like him, you're not required to like him.
Also, doesn't matter if we like him or not. Really, we got to respect him regardless.
That's what I'm saying. He sits upon the seat of Peter, and whether we like it or not, he carries with him the church.
Yep. There's
plenty of people that did not like Saint Benedict XVI. There are plenty of people that hated John Paul II because he was the anti-communist pope.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're not going to please everyone. I will say every single thing that St. Francis has ever said or done has been in the vein of the one thing that Christ wants us to do is be compassionate. Whether there is like some ambiguous thing that he says that makes people go, well, what did he mean by that? Well, he meant the thing that doesn't defy doctrine. He meant be good to people, be kind to people. Why? Well, he's having dinner with all these trans people and gay people. Yeah, well, Christ ate with people who were a lot worse than that. And he didn't do it because he's affirming them. He's showing them the light of Christ, the love of God through his actions by being compassionate to them. If you can't do the same, then you've got work to do yourself.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. You know, I even have all that of a negative opinion of him. And I think it's one thing that we all have to keep in mind too, is that just like we wouldn't bash our earthly fathers, no matter how bad of a relationship we have with him. Like I have a tumultuous past with my own dad. I'm not going to go and start talking trash on him. One of the commandments is honor thy father and thy mother for a reason. And we have to hold true to that. And it's the same thing for the man that occupies the seat of Peter. My issue is just the ambiguity. It's like, man, let's just be clear on stuff, because sometimes I just don't know where he stands on any of it. On one hand, he seems really based when he's like, yep, nope, women will not become deaconesses. But then on the other hand, they're talking about like non-sacramental positions of these deaconesses, and you're like, so what did you actually mean, dude? Like, I don't know. Or, I heard of a man was talking about how his kid came home from school and said, well, Francis talked about, same-sex unions being blessed, and then you have to kind of parse it out and explain it. And I'm like, that's what I mean. I'm like, just be a little bit more clear about stuff. I think we wouldn't have an issue, but even then people would nevertheless will have an issue.
Well, they had a really big issue. They had a really big issue with him being very clear on women shall not be ordained. Everybody had a really big issue.
Oh, frociagine, when he said frociagine, when he talked about, the Homo sapien.
No, that when she's like that CNN or whatever, CBS lady on, as a little girl growing up in the Catholic Church, she tried to put on this like sob story narrative. Can she ever look forward to a day of participating in the church as a member of clergy? No.
Yeah, I thought that was good. I personally enjoyed that. But regardless, man, like obviously I look back at Benedict the 16th and I'm like, man, I wish I'd become Catholic at that time. What a brilliant mind. But then there was issues. Yes. Right? Like what?
The same sentiment here.
Right. It's just so powerful. And then, J2P2, JP2 is who I came up with when I was like younger. He always seemed like a nice man, a little bit more of a liberal pope, but he also did some beautiful things too, right? It's like there have been worse leaders of the church. There have been better. He got us and promulgated the catechism in the 90s. So I think when we look back at Francis, inevitably how we do with every other pope, we're going to be able to pull out the good more than we're able to right now in the present moment with him occupying the seat. But regardless, no matter if you're over here or over there, one thing I can absolutely agree with you on is we got to pray for the Father, no matter what. Pray for the Father. Otherwise, why are you Catholic if you're going to just be disparaging him all the time? It's like you're in the wrong camp, buddy.
Go be Episcopalian. Dirty savage.
That's right. Yeah, I love it, man. And that was again going back to the
like how Ed's just shaking his head at us this whole time. He's like, he feels like he needs to babysit us.
I was gonna say, Ed, I'm like, how many popes have you lived through?
Half of them.
Yeah. 185 of them. No.
Well, here's the problem. When I tell people that Leo the 13th is my favorite pope, they say, "Oh, was it fun meeting him?" I'm that old.
That just mic drop there. I love it.
No. I mean, I like how Mike, when you said Francis is definitely not the worst pope. I'm like, I don't know. Have you guys, and people disagree, like he's absolutely the worst. I'm like, have you ever heard of Pope John the 12th? I mean, if I recall, I think Pope Stephen the 6th was bad too, but Pope John the 12th was that guy that he gave a bunch of land from the Papal States to his mistress. He murdered a lot of people, and then he was killed by a guy that caught him in bed with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So Francis is a saint in comparison with some of these things. But that's the cool thing that I like to bring up when people try to disparage the Pope. Oh, the Pope is this, the Pope's woke, and da da da. I'm like, look, we've had 266 popes. including Francis,
Mhm.
right? About 24 of them would make Hitler go, geez, guy's kind of messed up, right?
1000%.
Throughout history, people tend to forget that Christ chose 12 apostles, and even one of those turned out to be a bad apple simply because of his human nature. Because I
Correct.
do not subscribe to the whole Calvinist thing of, well, it was predestined that
Oh yeah.
that Judas was gonna, like, no, we're not doing that crap. That's weird. But it's a man. The man is going to do what a man does as a human. He's going to fail. He's going to fall short. Why do you think Francis talks about going to confession every single day? Right? It's no different. But if Christ himself chose 12 human men to be his apostles, and one of them turned out to be a dirtbag, which we all know who that is, why do you think any men that would follow in the procession of the first pope would be possibly any different or capable of any less?
Yeah, I like how you just stomped on the tulip there too. That's one of my favorite things to do. But jokes aside, it's the same thing, man. I mean, like I experience it. That's why I try to tread carefully around talking about Protestants in a disparaging way, or even certain people within the Catholic community, because I was just there just a few months ago. I mean, we're still infected with sin and pride in some areas. And it's like a process of sanctification. That's the point. You never get there. It's like it's ongoing, and it's a continual reevaluation. That's why, praise God for the sacrament of reconciliation and obviously the Eucharist. But pride is at the root of all this, right? I remember this slanderous stuff I would say about the Blessed Mother, about the Pope, about, all the child abuse scandals in the church, and a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You can't engage with people that are in that state. That's why I was kind of afraid, and there was a degree of trepidation when I wanted to start going posting about my Catholic reversion. But it was like the only thing that God had put on my heart. Now I was making content on masculinity, marriage, faith, fitness, etc. And I was trying to come up with, this was early May, late April. I'm like, what else should I talk about? What else should I talk about? I was getting like this severe creativity block. The only thing that I felt that I wanted to talk about, or that God impressed upon me to talk about, was me going through this reversion process. It was the rosary, it was the Blessed Mother, it was going to confession. And I was scared at first, man. What was really cool that happened was I lost a bunch of followers, but it like catapulted, especially on Instagram, like, tens of thousands of people after that were like, oh, it's the Catholic guy. And I got way more support than I got hate. But the hate that I received, man, it's like, I used to think that it was a good idea, like engaging with these people in like a debate, but you could win, quote unquote, but there's no winning. There's just no winning. And that's why I got to take a page out of your playbook and just like not engage. Because again, it took me, I had a bunch of people sharing the right apologetics with me for a long time. And it took me to dissolve the pride that I had around my worldview, to really look at it from a position of humility, that got me to this point. That's why I have like more of a soft spot for people that are maybe still in that state. I'm like, how can you say that about the Blessed Mother? I'm like, you know what? I was there too. Just give this person time. Dedicate a part of the rosary to them. It will happen in time. Lord knows my nonna, my great nonna in heaven, my mom, my family, there have been people praying for me in this Catholic process. And maybe it took a long time, but it happened. And I think we should approach that with.
It took me 20 years, man.
There you go. Were you Protestant before that?
I was Protestant from like birth to 12. I stopped going to church around 17 when I joined the Army. I would go to the church services on Sunday just because there was absolutely nothing else to do. And I was broke as a private, right? Like, I'm making $800 a month. Where am I going to go? Even though this is like early 2000s. But I met my wife in 2005. She was born Catholic. to a Catholic family. Like literally her mom's name is Guadalupe. Okay.
Oh, beautiful. Let's go.
Right. And all of her brothers and sisters are named after saints. I'm talking Christopher, Michael, Stephen. I like all of it. Right. They're all of her brothers. They're like in their middle names are either their first name or middle name is named after a saint. Same with their sisters. You know, my wife's is named after Saint Anne, who was, you know, Our Lady's mother.
Love it.
And she was still received poor catechesis to the point where she never received First Communion, even though absent-mindedly she took communion at her mother's funeral. She took communion at her father's funeral, not knowing that doing so was a sacrilege to the Eucharist, right?
But she was unaware, so
that's what I'm saying. Not knowing,
yeah.
She's unaware, so it fails to meet one of the three for mortal sin.
Mm-hmm.
But then she was with me, and she's Catholic for 20 years, and year 19 is when I decided to convert. So,
what put you over the edge?
I went to mass.
Yeah, I'll do it. A traditional mass?
No, just mass. It's a high mass where it's like half in Latin, half in English.
Beautiful.
I mean, Ed has seen the masses at my parish. Like, it's hardcore reverent.
But it's technically like a Novus Ordo parish.
It's phenomenal.
It's actually the home. It's the home of the TLM in our entire deanery. We have we have a TLM at 12:30, but I go to the 10 a.m. mass because it's a Latin mass in English at this point.
Right. Yeah, right.
I'm talking, we've got 50 altar servers walking down in full procession, swinging a thurible, 360 in the incense. You know,
beautiful, man. Yeah, it's
Adorentum. It's hardcore.
Beautiful. Yeah, going to the traditional mass for the first time was definitely heart changing. Seeing that, because we were all like, as people born post, concilium, we're all products of the Novus Ordo, especially in my, coming up. That's what I thought Catholic Mass was. And I'm not going to be the guy that is going to crap on the Novus Ordo Mass. I've seen some pretty reverent Novus Ordo masses. It's unfortunately like few and far between. Most of them are like these boomer parishes with like folk music. Sacrament's still valid though in those places too. Like, people don't want to hear it and talk about it, but it's still valid. Like, I'm not one of those guys. The TLM is quite the undertaking with children, how long it is. But what I love, and this was the point that I wanted to get to earlier, it's like when you go to church on Sunday when you're a Protestant, right? It's get some coffee, get a donut, sit down, and you listen to the sermon. And quite often there can be good sermons, but a lot of times you're leaving, you're like, yeah, that really spoke to me. That it's like about you. What I loved and what was like I was confronted with going to the traditional mass, it's not about you at all. Like, not even a little bit.
You were the most insignificant person there.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, it was the same for me. And when you walk out of mass, you feel like something just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, us three could have this conversation for a while. So I'm going to bring you back on sometime next week if you want, because we've got 60 seconds before we hit the hour mark.
Sure. Yeah, dude. No problem, man. I totally understand. Time limits are good. Not everybody wants to listen to like 4-hour conversation. Yeah.
And I got to upgrade my StreamYard account to stream more than an hour. And I don't want to do that.
I love it.
It's purely cost effective.
Let's go.
So yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. So we're going to have you back as long as you're willing, or if not, I'll send some of Ed's Jersey people to handle it.
In that case, I'll be on tomorrow. Let's go.
Well, I'm not doing nothing tomorrow but cutting grass.
Good.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up with the last 20 seconds. Us three will probably continue talking after the recording, but y'all who watched, listened, thank you for doing so. And we'll see you on Monday.
God bless you.
This was Mike Pantile. Make sure you follow him.
Thank you very much, guys. God